Hello, everyone. This is Ken from Vintage Card Voyage. And of course, I have
Marc.
And today we have a special guest. Some of you may have known from past shows that I'm actually from Michigan. That's where I grew up. And even though I'm an Expos fan, I still have a soft spot for the Tigers. My best friend Billy still lives in Okemos, Michigan, and he was telling me about this person who he couldn't stop talking about his collection. So I said, "Can you give me Todd's information?" And so we have Todd Walter. Todd, welcome to the show.
How you doing, guys? Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
So Todd, maybe you can give us a little intro about yourself, who
Sure.
you are, what you do, and then we'll get into the whole sports collecting thing.
Sure. All right. So my name is Todd Walter, Michigander. Lived my whole life here in Michigan. Grew up on the east side of the state, 35 miles northeast of Detroit. So I have fond memories, of course, as we're talking baseball today, of going down to our beloved old Tiger Stadium. And then, of course, I've lived in different parts of the state. My professional career, which really relates to my collection and where it's taken off for me, I worked in elder care for 34 years. And 10 of those years, I owned my own assisted living home right here in the little town where I live in Williamston. And that's how I met your friend Billy, because Billy's father lived at our community. And so several years ago, when I owned my community, around opening day of baseball, I would always bring in some of my artifacts in my collection. And I would share and we would talk and I would listen and I would share. And I was really intrigued just how interested again, how people were of our beloved Detroit Tigers. So then I had the idea of, what if I take this to another macro level and see what's out there. So I started advertising to take my collection on the road to retirement communities, assisted living, independent living, whoever wanted to listen. And it has really taken off. And last year I did 55 shows. I'm now doing some private shows for people in their homes or other establishments. And I'm getting ready to kick off the 2026 season. I've got my schedule ready to advertise in 2026. And right now I have about 40 communities who said, we definitely want you back. So I've been a memorabilia collector of Detroit Tigers for about 26 years now. I'm in my man cave right now, and maybe later there'll be a video of it. I sent you to a video of my man cave, but it's my tiger cave, and I've been a collector for 26 years. And like I said, when I first met you guys, it's pretty tight down here, but I still can fit some things, smaller things. But I have a plethora of everything, not just cards. And I know your YouTube channel is a lot about baseball cards, and I have some of them here today. But I really look for the unique things, and I'm going to share some of those things today as you ask the questions about some really unique things in my Detroit Tiger collection.
Yeah, that's great. Todd, do you remember the first thing you collected?
Yeah, the very first thing I got, and I have it over here on the shelf, but it was a Jimmy Northrup autographed baseball. In the little town I grew up in New Baltimore, 35 miles northeast of Detroit. And I remember, I think it was in fourth or fifth grade, and we had a charity basketball event at our school, and some of the old Tigers were coming to play. And Jimmy Northrup was there, and I still have that ball. It's quite faded today, but you can read it, and it says, "To Todd, Jim Northrup." And so that was my very, very first piece of my Detroit Tiger collection.
Mark, Mark, do you remember what position Jim Northrup played?
I want to say in the outfield, but I don't know where specifically.
Yeah.
I think he played center field.
I
Yeah.
was going to say that, but I didn't know for
Started
sure.
at shortstop, didn't he?
Yeah, he played most of the time it was center field. Oh, Northrup
Yeah.
did. Yeah. We lost him several years ago. Quite young age too. But yeah, he
Mhm.
was a Michigander as well. In that generation, most of those guys lived right here. That's what made it magical too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so the 68 season, maybe you can talk a little bit about, how old you were and what memories you have of that great season.
Well, 68, I have great memories of it, but I was only one when they won
Okay.
that World Series. So we'll talk a lot more about 84 maybe today. But I was one when they won it in 68. I was born in 67. But again, when I do my shows, I do spend a lot of time on the 68 team because that was a very pivotal classic World
Mhm.
Series. You know, when we looked at the year prior in '67, when we had the riots in Detroit and around the nation, you know, we had 43 people that were killed here in Detroit when the riots
Mhm.
occurred. And the riots started on a night in the summertime when we were playing a game. And I remember reading that they said, you know, they were not going to announce it over the intercom to create hysteria amongst the fans. But
Mhm.
afterwards, people were channeled out another whole way. Mickey Lolich jumped on his motorcycle. You know, he was part of the National Guard. Willie Horton going downtown and standing on cars trying to tell the crowd to calm down, took his life in his own hands.
Wow.
So, you know, so in '67, the Tigers were really good in '67 too, had all the same players. But again, unlike today with all your wild cards and other ways to get in the playoffs, you know, how you made the World Series was at the end of the season, you were the best team in the American League, you were the best team in the National, and they lost out going to the World Series on the last game of the season. So
Mm.
that was, you know, that was amongst the, you know, so you have the riots and all that in the city, and then the poor Tigers miss on the last day. But then they came back and, you know, in spring training in Lakeland in '68, and Bill Freehan was quoted as saying, you know what? If we remain healthy, we have the same guys and we will win it in '68. And by early May, they took over first and never looked back. And so some really cool things that happened in '68. A lot of cool things in '68. The year of the pitcher. You know, you had Denny McClain, you had your Bob Gibsons, all those. You've got you know, you had some really historical things going on, which I think, you know, now we've only got a handful of those players that are still alive. You know, I
Mhm.
mean, we lost a few of them last year. So for as far as folks who are really interested in the Tigers, we do grieve that because it's getting smaller. And we got to keep those memories alive, and
Yeah.
that's why I do my shows to continue to bring those memories to the forefront of people's attention. And that's what's magical about my presentations because, man, when you start talking about Norm Cash's and Lolich's and Freehands and all those guys, people just come right back and go, oh my God, I
Yeah.
remember when. So that
Yeah.
was '68 was a really, really cool year in history in regards to the Detroit Tigers.
Do you have a favorite Tiger from '68?
From '68, I would probably say Lolich. You
Okay.
know, Mickey Lolich, God love him. He's alive. You know, he's
Yeah.
slowed down some, but he's still out there. And I've met Mickey several times. And the reason why I think I like Mickey Lolich, I'm a left-hander myself. So Mickey,
Um,
of course, that left-handed pitcher, and he was such a workhorse, man. I mean, I know we had Denny McClain in those years too, but you know, Mickey Lolich was more the long haul. And you know, when you figure he pitched over, you know, 400 innings a couple years, and his arm never got sore. He never missed a game because of an injury. Sure, his arm was tired, but when you look at today, all the injuries we have, he never missed a game
Wow.
because of an injury. And when you look at the magical what happened in the '68 World Series, you know, pitching 3 complete games on less than a 5 days rest, and the last two back to back. You know, and I don't know. I don't know. That gives me goosebumps when I think about that. And so I have a Detroit Tigers seat over here in my collection. Number 16 was the seat that I obtained two of them. And of course, that was Lolich's number. So when he,
Mhm.
he signed that one for me, and of course,
that's
he's quite a character. He really is a funny guy. But I think I really did like Mickey Loach. I mean, there were so many greats, your ALK lines and all them, but I think I
sure.
really, really like Mickey Lolich the best.
Yeah. That's great. And Mickey still signs through the mail.
Yeah, he does. You know, he does. And I don't know it's been maybe over a year or two since he signed in person. And those days, again, like we talked about, are becoming much smaller. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful. I mean, I saw Mickey in person a couple years ago at, I think it was the Detroit Historical Museum in downtown Detroit. I went with a friend of mine who writes for Saber. And we went, and we
Mhm.
were only 50 people in the audience. And this is right after Tom Gage and Mickey Lolich came out with Mickey's new book. And here we are in the room, and Mickey's I've got it on video, kind of showing us how he threw his curveball. You know,
Mhm.
here he was in his 80s, and he's going through that motion, and I'm just sitting there going like, oh my God, I hope this afternoon never ends. It was really cool. So even though they're getting older and the crowd is getting smaller, I still think like many, many fans, we we freeze that in our mind that they'll always be there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the cool part of the collection because when I sit down here and I look at Willie Horton right now, he's still with us too and slowing down, but you just look at that huge man and what he brought to that game in the city of Detroit. And so he's frozen in your mind, and when we lose him, in the city of Detroit, it's going to be another real sad day in the state of Michigan. It
Mm.
really will. Yeah. But we're grateful he's with us now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I grew up watching the Tigers in the 70s, and that was a struggle.
Oh yeah.
A lot of a lot of lean years there.
A lot of pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then that then brings me to 84, which I was a teenager. I think, Mark, you were living in Michigan then, or were you?
Nope, I was in Hawaii at that point. I left Michigan when I was 5, so I
Mm.
was 13 at that point. That was a great year for me, honestly.
Oh,
The Tigers and then the Olympics happening too. It was a big deal, like
so much.
personally for me because McDonald's was giving away free food whenever the U.S. won medals, and so I was getting all this free food everywhere.
Yeah. Good old McDonald's.
Good old
Yeah,
McDonald's.
84.
But no, that year I was going to ask you too about 84. Not to step on your toes here, Ken, but I'm curious about like how people respond to 84 versus 68. Like what is more like in people's like hearts as far as like the World Series for the Tigers?
And that question has been asked over and over and over and over again in person and in books. Which was the better team? And of course, you get different responses. I wasn't really around, and I was 1 in 68. But when I look at those iconic guys, what made that special again is the high majority of those guys were right here, farm bred Michigan men. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And many of them were. And so that made that really, I think, really tight, and again, based on what happened in 67. But 84, 84, I was a senior in high school when they won that game, that World Series. And boy, I remember that too so vividly. I mean, the night that they won it, of course, with the Kirk Gibson blast, but just so much of that year. And it all started again right with that 35-5.
Yeah.
So again, when I do my shows and we get to trivia and I hold up these two giant numbers, raise your hand if you know in Detroit Tiger history why these are significant. It's amazing. The hand goes up right away. And every elder crowd, that was their win-loss for the first 40 games.
Right.
So again, if you truly ask any true Detroit Tiger fan, how did the Tigers start in 84? Let me show you my tattoo. 35-5. And that record still holds today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that when you think of that 40 games, 35-5.
Yeah.
Holy gosh. You think of the gel that went with it. And early on, their first 17 games on the road, they won. Jack Morris on the first Saturday game of the season in April, a no-hitter in Chicago. There was no turning back. And Sparky even said after they started to lose, holy cow, he was such a nervous wreck that entire season after that, because if they didn't win it all, nobody would ever remember 35-5. So that very iconic, when you look at those players too, I mean, I don't even want to say similar because they are unique, unique team, but boy, you talk about the gel and the chemistry and how some of that even came together, how we acquired Willie Hernandez from the Phillies, that happened like right at the beginning of the year, and oh my God, and he's no longer with us on this earth.
Right.
And so glad I met him. You think about what he went on to do in the Cy Young that year, and Jack Morris, and of course Gibson and Lou Whitaker and Trammell. I mean, those names are infamous in not just Detroit Tiger, but around the country. You know what I mean? And some really good guys on that team that just really they played well together. I mean, how can you not say they didn't play well together when even though the rest of the year was not great, they weren't great the remainder of the year, but they made it to the playoffs and we won it all.
Yeah.
We won it all. So it was a very magical time, and yet we long for that again in the city of Detroit. That's too many years now, too many years. But boy, 84, it had so many other cool things. The owner of the Tigers did not want dancing in the streets to be played by Martha and Vandellas because he thought it would cause riots again in the streets like 67. And finally, Campbell gave in because the crowd said, and that was the hottest thing. Everybody was dancing in the street. The song Bless You Boys.
Hmm.
That was written early on, and if you don't know that quick story, Al Ackerman from Channel 7 News, a news reporter for years, when the Tigers were having their 35-5, one night after his sportscast, it was over, he looked right at the camera. He said, "Bless you, boys,"
Hmm.
and bam! And that's how that just took off.
Wow.
Man, bless you, boys. So that whole summer was crazy, crazy fun. And of course, October, when we won it all here in Detroit. And that's what I like about that World Series, because we won it here at home.
Hmm.
We won it at home. Yeah. And that iconic stadium that is no longer standing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have the good fortune to go to any of the games? The
Not of
Winter.
the World Series, I did not. No. Boy, I feel bad about that, but no, I did not.
Hmm.
I wasn't a collector like I am now. I should have been collecting for about 26 years. I mean, love the Tigers, but no, that would have been. I know people who were. I have some
Hmm.
good friends, and some other people I meet in my audiences. I mean, I remember talking in my presentations. There's women and men who I met that ran right on the field and tore up the sod, and they knew right where they planted it in their home in Plymouth, Michigan, by their pool. And that's a really cool thing about the presentations, because again, you see the glitter in people's eyes when I
Yeah.
do these shows, because they're going, "Oh my God, I was at that game and it was unbelievable," or "I was at that game of the year," or whatever. So no, I've never been to a World Series game. I've been to playoff games now with the most recent teams, but
Hmm.
gotta get there. We will next
Yeah.
year. We will next year.
Always believe.
Always believe.
Todd, are there items that in your collection, in your man cave? I'm sure there are many things from '84.
Oh yeah.
Is there anything you can show us?
Yeah. So again, and I know you guys focus with your YouTube channel on cards. I have a few cards
Yeah.
here that I brought too. A couple ones that I've got signed through the years. This one here is of old Mr. Charlie Maxwell. Now,
Hmm.
Charlie passed away a little over a year ago, and he was the oldest remaining Tiger that was alive when he passed. He was 93 years old. Lived in
Hmm.
Paw Paw, Michigan. And Charlie, I got his autograph down in Paw Paw when I met him. He lived in Paw Paw for many years, which is south of Kalamazoo area. And
Hmm.
he was known as Mr. Sunday Punch because he hit the majority of his home runs on Sundays. And so Charlie was the last, or not the last, but he was the oldest Detroit Tiger at that time, and he was 93.
Hmm.
Other cards just quickly I've got here. Of course, I got, like Al Kaline's rookie. Never had him sign the card. I have Al signing many other things. Good old Willie Horton here. He signed that one for
Hmm.
me. Good
Nice.
old Willie. I'll share a couple of things. You wanted to ask about some special things in my collection. Yeah, I've got Miguel Cabrera's rookie card over here, Justin Verlander's rookie card.
Hmm.
But a couple of really interesting things in my collection. Again, like I said when we first met, I kind of go for the uniqueness of some special things. And based on my presentations that I've done, some really cool doors have opened and continue to open for me. Like today, guys, here our friend Billy, your friend Ken,
Yeah.
and now we're having this talk. And
Hmm.
so that's the magical thing, because the Tigers in baseball have a way to do that with people if they love the old English D. So I feel very blessed. And so I'm going to share this one first. This is this quick story of Mr. Johnny Barrow. All right. Johnny Barrow was a Detroit Tiger in 1948, only one season. Okay. Now, Johnny Barrow, I'm holding here today Johnny Barrow's original hat from
Wow.
1948. 1948.
Awesome.
So, based on my presentations that I do, and I've been blessed to be interviewed on the news several times. Last spring, I received an email from Johnny Barrow's son, Greg, who lives in California, and he said, "Mr. Todd Walter," he says, "I'm just reaching out to you. Every year, Every year on opening day of MLB, I sit down, this is Greg, I sit down at the computer and I pull up my dad's name. And I just look at my dad and I see if anybody's written anything new or anything news about my father, just to remember my dad and
Mm.
to say he was a professional baseball player. And he said, so I do that every year. And this year, for some reason, when I pulled him up, we found my wife Cynthia found one of your news links, or we typed up the Tigers. That's what it was. We typed
Mm.
up the Detroit Tigers, and all of a sudden a link came up for one of your news stories and presentations. And that's how we found you. My wife searched you further, and this is how we found you. What he wrote in my email. And he said, what I would like to do is keep in contact because I would love to come out to Detroit. I've never been to Comerica Park, never been to Tiger Stadium, and I'd like for us to meet. And he goes, I have some things that I think, based on what you're doing and sharing with the world and the country and the state of Michigan, I'd like to give you in memory of my father. So now let's go to the end of the season because we kept in contact all season long and it didn't work. And then in September, Greg said, we're coming out. We got our airline tickets.
Mm.
So Greg and Cynthia flew out on a Thursday, and we met him at Comerica Park, my friend and I, Mitch, and we sat with Greg and Cynthia Barrow. He had a special jersey made with the name Barrow on the back for his father.
Mm.
He sat there and he wept.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
he wept. And it was so cool. And after we left, we went back to the Motor City Casino. And he says, let me go up to my room. And he came down and he gave me, this is a man I only met
Hmm.
in an email.
Yeah.
It's crazy fun. And he had a huge brown folder for me of every article that was ever written in the papers about his dad's baseball career.
Wow.
And then he said, and this is the treasure I want you to have in memory of my dad. He says, I have two children. They're not into baseball. I'd rather pass this on to somebody like you
Mm.
who will share my dad's name now when you do your presentations. That's
That,
pretty cool,
that's
That's
really cool.
amazing.
right? So I keep in contact with Cynthia and Greg. And like I said, when I first met you guys, I'm heading out in March to San Diego in 2026 because the Tigers start their season
Mm.
in San Diego. And so we've already got our tickets for that. And Greg and Cynthia will be joining me for a game at that time. Cool
Oh,
stuff.
that's great. What a
Yeah.
Love
great
So
it.
story.
yeah. So when I look at this hat, you go again, how human beings over time, people were smaller stature then. And I look at this little hat and I think, oh my gosh, this is a man in 1948 who had this on his head
Mm.
at the old stadium. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. You want me to share something else?
Sure.
Please.
Yes.
All right. So again, another unique thing. I would really like to share the story of this gentleman here because some really cool things are going to be happening next year for him. But there he is,
Oh, yeah.
Mm. The
Mark
bird.
the Bird Fidrich,
Yep.
the one and only. The one and only. So yes, you're a YouTube channel that goes across this great country, and some people may never heard of the bird, but well, a lot of people do across the country, of course, but let me tell you about the bird in the state of Michigan, because if you're a Detroit Tiger fan, you will never, ever forget the bird. Ever. He is eternally in our minds, even though he passed away in 2009 at the age of 54. But
Mhm.
Mr. Fidrich, I was about 7 years old, and well, 76, so 67, 8 or 9 years old, when the glory of the year of 1976 hit the town of Detroit, Michigan, the city. And that was the year that Marc Fidrich had his debut as a Detroit Tiger. He was drafted in 74, but unlike today with all the social media and everything, nobody knew of Mark. He was in
Mm.
Lakeland and
Yeah.
doing his thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he made it in 1976, but he wasn't even a starter in 76. And, here we got the month of April goes on, and all of a sudden we're in the month of May. He pitched one inning in April, but all of a sudden it's May 15th, and Vern Rule, another
Mm.
pitcher for the Tigers, got sick, and the door opened for Mark Fidrich. And the day was May 15th, and old Bird had his debut, this tall, lanky, figure that looked like Big Bird on Sesame Street, thus where he got his nickname. And yes, he was unique. He talked to the ball, he patted the dirt on the mound, he never let the groundskeepers touch his dirt. He would always run over and hug, shake his hands with his players right in the middle of the game if they had a good play. He was so unique and so authentic. And in the city of Detroit at that time in 76 again, we were in very tough economical times. The car industry was booming, or not booming, it was tanking. But
Mm.
yet this very authentic, real man brought people to the ballpark based on what he was doing. So now on May 15th, he pitches his first game against the Cleveland Indians at that time, and he won 5-1. Pitched the whole game, 9 innings. And all of a sudden, people started to notice something was going on with this character. And then we take you now to the magical night of June 28th, 1976, because unlike today with all the different channels you can get ball games, back then there was only one night game of the week, and it was the Monday night game of the week on
Mm.
ABC.
Yep.
And the Detroit Tigers were hosting in Detroit the New York Yankees.
Mm.
And who was pitching that night? Mark the Bird Fidrich. And those tickets sold out in a record time. 40 some thousand people packed into that summer night stadium, watched the Bird pitch 9 innings in 1 hour and 51 minutes.
Mm.
He bowled down the Yankees. They won that game. And after that game, those 40 some thousand people were not leaving Tiger Stadium. The roar of the crowd got louder and louder and louder. And Mark Fidrich's mentor at that time was a gentleman, another great player that I liked because he was left-handed, and that was Rusty Staub.
Mm.
And Rusty was kind of Mark's mentor because Mark was pretty crazy. He was all over, right? And he said, "Son, they're not going to leave here tonight until you go out for a standing ovation." And you got to remember, Mark was 20 years old. He was so naive. He didn't, he just loved baseball. Well, he didn't know what to do, and he didn't want to go out there by himself. So he asked Rusty Staub, "Come on out here with me." And Rusty said, "No, listen, son, they're not calling for Rusty and the Bird. They're saying the Bird." So they helped Mark on top of the dugout, the big concrete dugout,
Mm.
and there he stood. In very iconic picture in Detroit history, the very first people that he slapped hands with were the Detroit police officers that were standing on top of that dugout, and then the fans around. Well, after that night, Bird a mania took off all over the country. Not only here in Michigan, but all over the country. Birdomania. Whenever he pitched, people were there in Detroit, of course. That summer, after he debuted, the average attendance at Tiger Stadium, I think, was close to 36,000 people. The days he didn't pitch, it was close to 11,500.
Wow.
And not just here, but all over the country. We're going to Boston. Is the Bird pitching? He just was so real. So by the end of that year, the Tigers weren't great again in the 70s, but he was great. He won the Rookie of the Year. He was the starting pitcher in the American League on the All-Star game. He was only number 2 behind Jim Palmer for the Cy Young. He had a 19-9 record, a 2.76 ERA, and he won several other awards. And then he went home. And then spring of 77, he's right back there at Lakeland doing funny stuff. And Rusty tried to sell him, "Son, slow down." And he didn't listen. And he went to catch a ball, and he hit the fence at Joker Marchant Stadium. And he knew he hurt his knee, and he heard it. And that was the beginning of the end of his 5-year career. He would pitch 5 more years, but he would never be the same. And it was not until after he retired, based on technology and stuff, that they diagnosed him with a torn rotator cuff in his arm because he compensated with that knee injury.
Mm.
So he retired at the tender age of 29, and he left the baseball world. In all his books, one of the greatest books I've ever written on the Tigers is his biography called The Bird. It is so good because he was such a humanitarian. He taught us a lot. He really did. He taught us what it is to be human. I get emotional because I love Mark the Bird. Oh my God, I love Mark the Bird. But he was so simple, and he didn't even know what a 29,000 a year salary meant. He pumped gas in Northborough. You know,
Yeah.
he worked on cars. He just made it to the big leagues. So he said, "I have no regrets. I'm 29. Sure, it could have went longer, but guess what? I made it.
Yeah.
I made it." So anyway, so Mark retired at 29. He moved back home to Northborough. He bought a farm. He began to raise cattle and stuff. He had a little trucking business, and then he met the love of his life, Ann. You see, Ann's family owned and still does own a little diner in Northborough, Massachusetts called Chet's Diner. And they made a documentary of Mark about 8 years ago now, and Tom Selleck is the narrator, and it's powerful. You can watch it on YouTube. It's so good. Well, in this video, they taped it, ESPN did, in Northborough. And a lot of it was done right in Jet's Diner on his farm. And I watched this many, many, many times. And then in 2022, in June, I had the opportunity to go out to Boston. I have a friend who lives out there. He invited me to a game. And I said, "Hey, Rick, when I come out, let's go to Northborough. It's only a half hour away." So we did. And my only expectations that day were to eat at the diner and maybe see a few things in town.
Mhm.
So now I take you to June 22 of 2022. We drove to Northborough on a beautiful first day of summer. And we drive in this little rural town, and by gosh, there's the diner. And I'm like, whoa. Chet's Diner. Here it really is. So we go into the diner, and I just remember it was a small diner. It is a small diner. And I walked in, and I just remember looking in the walls, and all over the walls were just photos of Mark Fidrich. And we got seated at our table, and we weren't even there 5 minutes, and I was wearing my Detroit Tigers Mark Fidrich jersey that day.
Nice.
And I had a little tap on my shoulder, and I turned around, and there was this young boy about 11 years old, and he said, quote unquote, "Sir, that's a really nice jersey you're wearing." I said, "Thank you, young man." I said, "My name's Todd." I said, "And what's your name?" He says, "I'm David Fidrich. I'm the grandson of Mark Fidrich."
Awesome.
I just went, "Oh my gosh," because I didn't see David in the video. So I said, "Oh gosh, David." And remember, David never knew his grandfather. Mark
Right.
was already deceased at this time. So I was talking to David. I said, "Hey, by chance, is your mother here?" Mark's daughter, Jessica. He says, "Yeah, that's my mom up there at the griddle. She was flipping pancakes, and she heard us talking. She went, 'Give me a minute.'" She flipped her pancakes, came running over. She goes, "You can hug me." She was just like her dad, just like her dad. So we're hugging Jessica, and we're getting pictures. And then we eat breakfast, and another guy walks over. He says, "I don't mean to interrupt you guys, but he says, I see you met my son and my wife. My name is David Cooley. I'm the son-in-law of Mark Fidrich." I'm like, "Oh God, Dave." He says, I said, "This is just so overwhelming. I can't believe this. All I want to do is eat in the diner, and I'm meeting your family." He says, "Well, is there anything else you'd like to see while you're here today, maybe?" I said, "Well, tell me what's here." But I said, "I would like to see this if it's still in operation." And on my phone, I saw on a Facebook page of Mark sitting in one of his trucks. And
Mhm.
I'll show you this in a second. But the reason why I like the truck so much, it was a beautiful red truck, and the logo on the side was Mark pitching in a Tigers uniform.
Nice.
And I'm like, I said to Dave, "Oh my gosh, Dave, is this truck still around?" And he said, "What do you mean, is it around? It's part of the Fidrich farm. Do you want to go out to the farm?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what? Are you kidding?" He goes, "No." He goes, "Come on out to the farm. Here's my number. Eat your breakfast, and I'll meet you guys out at the farm." I don't even remember what I had to eat that day. And my friend Rick is like going, "Oh my God, Todd, I can't believe this is happening." So we eat, we say goodbye to the family, we drive out of town about 8 miles, and now I'm at the Fidrich farm that I saw in the ESPN video. We pull in, and there's the truck, and Dave says, "Get in it."
That's awesome.
Amazing.
I sat in this truck, and I felt like a 7-year-old boy back in 1976. And this is what Mark worked on. This was his life. And
Yeah.
I was in complete awe. So now we're talking, and I get out of the truck, of course, and Dave goes, "Come on over here. Let's walk in Mark's barn. I want to show you where his office was and stuff." And again, I'm taking it all in, and all of a sudden, I'm looking at Mark's office, and Dave reached up in the ceiling, unannounced to me, and he pulled down this for me. And he says, "I'd like you to have this as a Tiger fan, Todd." He goes, "I know you're a true Tiger fan." This was one of the very first license plates that Mark worked on a truck in his trucking business.
Hmm.
Now that, my friends, is a one of a kind,
Yeah, that's one of a kind.
unique,
For sure.
unique. So to wrap up this, we met Ann. We met Mark's widow. We went up to the Fidrich house. Ann met us on the porch. And we also went and saw another friend of Mark's, Joe Sullivan, who was in the video. And Joe has this big man cave of all Mark paraphernalia. And he gave me a baseball. I asked if there was anywhere in Northborough that they sold professional baseballs because I didn't bring one with me. And he knew what I was probably thinking to do. He says, "Don't worry, Todd." He goes, "I got one here for you." So I got a baseball, and I went back to Chet's Diner before the day ended to say goodbye to everybody and hoping that they were all there. And everybody was there. And I asked him for an autograph on a professional baseball. And this was a one of a kind, too. So I have the autograph of Jessica Fidrich,
Hmm.
Ann Fidrich, and little David.
That's great.
And Jessica was laughing because she goes, "Oh my God, I never signed a baseball before." and I'm really proud to say, based on that experience and that door that opened up, I am now good friends with the Fidrich family.
Amazing.
We text all the time, and next year, because next year will mark the 50th anniversary already
Wow.
of the summer of '76.
Yep.
Cooperstown, the Baseball Hall of Fame, is going to be having a special exhibit on
Oh,
Mark.
nice. Nice.
And also, the Detroit Tigers will be bringing back the Fidrich family to commemorate that special night. Wow.
Wow, indeed.
Mark
Cool.
Fidrich.
That's really cool.
Iconic.
I wonder if the national card show will do anything for that. I have a feeling they don't think that way.
No, you said that was next year?
Well, no, the Detroit one is in 27.
27. That's what I thought you said.
Yeah, I think it's
you're just
2027.
saying in general.
I'm just thinking,
28.
like,
I don't remember.
it's
Maybe
a
28.
pretty good opportunity. There's so many baseball fans, and I can't remember the amount of people, but there's that's classic. Great
Nice.
card.
Yeah.
Great card.
What a
It
great
might be
year.
actually 2028 because I think it's because it came back to Chicago this year and then it's 2 more years and then Detroit. So I think it's 2028 is when it goes to Detroit, I believe.
Oh, that would have been great if it was next year because
I know,
was thinking
yeah.
with that.
Well, yeah, and I was just thinking about how at the National they have all these auction houses that have kind of like a
Displays.
and somebody could do a display of Fidrich.
Totally.
Everybody would look at it. It would be awesome.
He was there'll never be another player like him.
Yeah.
Ever.
So,
Ever. And that's what I mean. He's been gone since 2009. But when you look at when he 77, he only pitched 5 more years, but he only pitched 1 good year. And it wasn't even a full season. It didn't start till May 15th.
yeah.
And yet what a legacy he left on the world, especially in the state of Michigan. The bird.
Yeah.
No one will ever forget the bird. Ever. Ever. And when I talk at my shows, you wouldn't believe the people that weep, elders, when I tell the story that I just shared here about Mark Fidrich, because they remember. They know.
Is number 20 your favorite number because of Fidrich?
No. No, but he definitely is up there on my list. He was just, because again, I kind of grew up in a blue collar family, rural, and I think we have a lot of commonalities. And after I read his book, he had a lot to teach us. He really truly did. Where you look at today, the salaries of athletes and all that, and back then it was such a different time. He didn't play for any salary. He played for the love of the game and the and the fans. It was beautiful. It was so beautiful, so pure.
It's incredible. It's incredible when you think about it. It's been 50 years, and I can't
50 years.
Can't even think of other pitcher who was as animated. Like
No.
Marc studies history too. I mean, I can't think of another pitcher who would have number one would be pitching for the crowd. You could
Yes.
feel
Right.
the energy.
Yes.
Yeah, and
I mean,
it wasn't an act. He was like actually
no.
just
No.
enjoying himself and being in the moment. But
Totally.
you would think there would be another pitcher who would come along in 50
I
years
know.
who would have that same energy, but
You
no.
sure? You're right, and I can't think of anybody in comparison to him. Just the way he physically looked too. He was awkward, the long hair. The whole big bird talk to the ball. All those things that went behind his authenticity. He truly was one of a kind. He
Yeah,
truly was. And
for
and
sure.
thank God, thank goodness for that. And his family, like I said, his daughter, boy, I only met her the one time, Jessica, but man, I looked at her and I thought, you're your father. You're your father. And that's what he wanted to continue. And and look at it this way. I just met them by having a jersey on, and now we text regularly. You know what I mean? It's like it's crazy. And again, all because of the love of a baseball game. And none of them, Mark too, he was retired when he met his wife. She never saw him play. Of course, Jessica's daughter never saw him play, right? So all them, they're living all those stories vicariously through us,
Yeah.
the fans. And when they come back next year again, and they've been there a few times, but they said they can't wait to come back, and we'll definitely connect. And I'm really looking forward to that in 2026 as well.
Will the Tigers have one night for him, or
That
what?
I don't know yet. Dave said the Tigers are still working on it, but it's in the works. Put it that way.
Should be May 15th if they're playing it at Detroit.
Or June 28th.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm sure they're looking at those magical numbers, because that would really make it very unique and iconic.
Yeah.
Iconic. No matter what, it'll be crazy fun. It'll be crazy fun that night or that weekend in Detroit. Believe me, it'll be like going right back there again.
The closest I can think of is some like a similarity would be like Fernando. Honestly,
Yeah.
that's like
Yeah.
pretty close, but he's not that type of person
Yeah.
that
Right.
Friedrich was. So
Right.
it's different in that respect.
Right.
The other one that comes to mind is like Mitch Williams, like Wild Thing. Like he was kind of crazy kind of character in a way, but not to that. He didn't get that publicity
Yeah.
and whatever.
There was the Mad Hungarian, remember?
Right, Al Rabosky.
Used to
Al
have
Rabowski. Oh, I remember that name. Yeah.
that
Another thing, and I don't have this confirmed, but I have heard it more than once. Another thing that made Mark unique and just showed you how simple he was, simple upbringing, everything that went with his journey. I've heard that he never charged for an autograph. And if that's true, that would really fit who he
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
right? It's pretty
Yeah.
magical. So again, you're saying, wow, next year's 50 years. When I look at this gentleman,
Mm-hmm.
he's frozen in our minds.
Mm.
This will always be Mark
Yeah.
Friedrich.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty. That's a wonderful part of my collection because of just how unique that whole story was, and then the artifacts that came with it too.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
Sure. Todd, do you have anything else?
Let me share another thing here. So Daryl Patterson, I shared that. So here's a little Daryl, Rookie of the Year in 1968. Never got a card signed by him here, but a kind of a unique story about Mr. Patterson. So Daryl again was a pitcher, rookie in 1968. Didn't make it on the big fame like a lot of other people, but he was a Detroit Tiger. He got his ring right in 68. Well, in 2018, the Tigers were celebrating the 50th anniversary of their 1968 win. So there was, matter of fact, it was almost a week-long celebration of things going on here in Detroit at different venues around the city. And I really wanted to partake in much of that as I could, and I did. Well, the day before the Saturday game, two things that came out of that magical weekend in 2018. First of all, I heard that Jose Feliciano was going to be talking at the Motown Museum in downtown Detroit. And it was going to be to a small crowd of people. Now, again, who was Jose Feliciano? For those who don't know, Well, he wasn't a ball player, but he's very iconic in Detroit Tiger history because he was asked by Mr. Ernie Harwell, amongst a couple other singers, Margaret Whiting and Marvin Gaye, who sang the
Mhm.
national anthem for the two other home games in '68. But Ernie Harwell heard of this little upcoming Puerto Rican singer who was making the circuit in Las Vegas, and he reached out to him. He said, "Sure, I'll come sing." And Jose Felicio, born blind, was just starting out. And here he shows up at Tiger Stadium, and of course he couldn't see. And right behind him was an orchestra band, Merle Whiting Band, I think they were called. And they were getting ready to play, and Jose kind of heard him tuning up. He says, "Well, I'm just going to strum my guitar." And they were kind of blown away with that. Well, he did. He strummed his guitar in front of a sellout crowd at the old stadium, and he sang from his heart. And he said, "I will always commend and say I sang from my heart, because many times when people sing the national anthem, people start clapping before it's over and they don't listen. I want people to listen to how I'm singing it." Well, when he was done with that in '68, some people cheered, of course, but many people booed. He also had many death threats on his life, called a communist because of how he sang it. We were in very turbulent times in that part of history. But he was very, very iconic. And when you think about how we sing the national anthem today at games, he began to change the world, their country, of how we perform that song. So in Detroit, he's also a pivotal part of baseball. He really is. And he's come back so many times to perform. And I think the last time he did was in 2018. And I got an autographed baseball by
Mhm.
Jose. Now,
Wow.
I didn't get it that day. I met Jose at the Motown Museum, shook his hand. He wasn't signing at that point. But and then I went to the game that night on that Saturday, and I remember standing there when he sang, and he sounded just like '68. And I
Mm.
remember standing on the side of me was two men and two women. They were married, and they were wearing old '68 memorabilia. And one gentleman was sobbing as he heard that song. And when it was over, he just looked at me and says, "That song has such significance to me because I was in Vietnam when
Mm.
that song was sung here." So again, he sung it so beautifully. Well, when I came home that night, the next Sunday, I just went on Jose's website, and his wife Susan is his spokesperson because of his vision. And here they lived in Vermont, and I sent them a little letter, and I sent him a picture of my collection. I told him that I met him, and I sent him a baseball. And I said, "Boy, I would love to have a baseball signed because it's part of Detroit history." A few months later, not only did he send me the ball, I'll take it out, but not only did he send me the ball, there's his unique autograph.
Mm.
But another nice thing about it is Jose is not only known for that, but he's also known for one of the greatest Christmas songs called Feliz Navidad.
Mm.
Yep.
And not only did he send me the ball, but he sent me a Hallmark Santa Claus that when
Awesome.
you press the button, it plays that song. Jose and Susan, I've kept in contact over the years. When Mr. Al Kaline died in 2020, Jose produced another music video called "I'm American." And if you look that up, he gives a nice tribute to Mr. Al Kaline in that video as well. It's
Nice.
so good. So again, unique, iconic. Now, quickly to talk about Daryl. So also at that game in 2018, Daryl, like other players of the '68 team, came, and that Saturday night before the game, they paraded them around the stadium in Ford cars, convertibles. And I
Mm.
remember seeing some of these old players. I'm thinking, "Oh boy, I'd love to meet some of those someday." And well, then of course this thing called COVID-19 hit in 2020, and I knew darn well that even when the pandemic lifted, some of these old players were never going to be on the signing circuit anymore. And that included Daryl. So I found Daryl's address off the internet, and I sent him a picture. I sent him a nice letter, and I sent him a ball. And on the letter that I sent Mr. Patterson, for whatever reason, I included my phone number, and I'm so glad I did, because it was like a month later. I'm driving home from fishing, and my phone went off, and I didn't recognize the number, so I pulled over, and it was Mrs. Patterson. And she said, "Hi, is this Mr. Todd Walter?" I said, "Sure is." She says, "Hi, Todd, this is Mrs. Patterson. I want to let you know that we received your baseball and your beautiful letter. Um, But unfortunately, Daryl's not able to sign a baseball anymore. I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that." She says, "Yeah, he had advanced dementia at that time."
Mhm.
And I said, "The last time I saw Daryl was in 2018." She goes, "That was the last time he made it back, and will be the last time." She says, "The Illich family was so gracious of getting the old players back. It was a struggle, but we got him there." So she said, "We thank you and know that Daryl would be very proud to have gotten this in the mail."
Mhm.
So I hung up. And I get really emotional because I love my Tigers so much.
Mhm.
And so my wife Cindy, thank goodness, my wife Cindy of 35 years. I worked in the field of aging my whole career, like you knew. And she just said to me, "You know what? It sounds like you had a great conversation with Mrs. Patterson. No, you can't get his autograph, but why don't you just ask her if she can maybe get his thumbprint on a ball?" I'm like, "Wow, what a great idea." So I called Betty back, Mrs. Patterson, and she answered. And I just ran the idea by her. Said, "I've worked in the field of aging my whole career. And again, I'm so sorry about Daryl. And what do you think about a thumbprint?" She goes, "I love the idea."
Mhm.
She goes, "But I can't promise you anything." I said, "I understand, Mrs. Patterson." And so we hung up, and several months later, and life went on, and all of a sudden it was November 22 of 2020. And we're watching TV in our bedroom, and my phone got a little text, and it was Mrs. Patterson. And she said, "I got it."
Mhm.
And not only is this ball now more special because Daryl just passed away this past fall,
Mhm.
but this is truly a one of a kind. And here is the thumbprint of Mr. Patterson on a
Mhm.
baseball. And I share this now because he's no longer alive, but I preserved his dignity. But here's a picture of Daryl the moment he put the thumbprint
Mhm.
on the ball.
Very
And
nice.
so that is truly unique. And I sent her a picture back by my Christmas tree, and she said, "Merry Christmas." And now Mrs. Patterson, I keep in contact with her. When Bill
Mhm.
Freehand passed away, I said, "We lost another Tiger." They were great friends, the Freehand family. When Darrow passed away in September, I reached out to Betty. And so now, again, these connections that have just happened because of you love the Tigers. And
Mhm.
people, they know that, and I think I've been very blessed. I mean, my God, I got a thumbprint on a ball from a '68 Tiger.
Hmm.
Pretty unique.
Pretty
Yeah.
unique indeed.
Pretty unique. So those are, yeah. I mean, I've got Miguel Cabrera's autograph. I mean, I don't say it that way, but I mean, I've got those things in my collection around here, which you saw in my video. I even met Miguel Cabrera's mother at spring training a few years back, and
Mhm.
we're and here, Mrs. Cabrera signed a baseball for me,
Mhm.
and I knew it was her. I knew it was her because I saw her at Comerica Park for one of Miggy's events, and I speak some Spanish. And I texted my friend Barb, "Barb, it's Mrs. Cabrera. What do you, I'm going to go ask her if I can get her autograph." And she goes,
Mhm.
"Do it, Todd, do it." So it was just the right time. And I went up to, it was in between innings. And I said, "Su madre Miguel Cabrera?" And she said, "Yeah." And I held up a baseball, "Autografía, por favor." And she thought I wanted Miggy's autograph. So she pointed down at Miggy. I said, "No, no, no." I said, "Su madre." And she went, "Yeah." And she signed the ball for me.
That's great.
How many people have an autograph of Miggy's mom? You know what I mean? But she was one heck of a softball player in Venezuela.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's great. So those are some of my highlights. You know?
Love them. Great stories. Thank you so
Yeah,
much, Todd.
yeah.
Todd, do you have any other stories you want to share today, or?
Well, one thing I'm working on this. I'm going to hold it very gently because it's out of its
Mhm.
case, but I'm working on this 1984 World Series baseball to getting
Mhm.
all the guys signed on
Yep.
it. And I've got pretty much, I think I'm only missing of those who are still alive because a few of those folks are deceased. Well, one of them I just got a month ago, and he's a very hard guy to get to sign. He's had some challenges. Marty Castillo.
Mhm.
And he finally came back to Detroit here a month ago or a month and a half ago, and it was a big thing. I mean, he had a lot of people over 2 days wanting his autograph because he doesn't sign. He hasn't been
Mhm.
around, I'll just say that, in the last couple of years, but it was great. I got a nice picture of Marty and I. But I mean, I think I'd have to count now of all those guys that are alive. I might have all those guys on this ball now.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I met Kirk Gibson a few years ago, who no longer does public signings because of his Parkinson's. I met
Right.
him a few years ago, and on his ball that he signed, I wanted him to put the logo, which he does. He signed his name and number, and he wrote, "He don't want to walk ya." And again, if you lived in Michigan and you know 84, who said that was Sparky Anderson. He don't want to walk ya. Talking about Goose Gossage, right?
Yeah.
Right on. So I got that. I got a ball here signed by the 1933 team.
Wow.
That's a vintage. Hank Greenberg, Goose Goslin on there. Billy Rogel. That's a gem in my collection too. So those are some. I mean, I got so much stuff, but those are some real prizes, I think, for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And one day I will be there. I will.
And I told you, and you have free admission. You could bring a sleeping bag and you can sleep in the museum.
Well, I don't think there'll be enough space for Marc and me. So
I'll create room. Yes, maybe by then there won't.
yeah.
But no, you are open invitation.
Yeah. So Todd, want to tell people how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, so how they can get a hold of me, I have a Facebook page, a personal Facebook page, so Todd Walter, if you see me there. And that's where I don't have a separate one for my Detroit Tigers stuff, so that's still just on my personal one. So Todd Walter, no S on my last name. I have my email address. So my email address is toddw1967 at frontier.com. And you can reach me that way too, and we can chat. Love to chat.
That's great. And we should think about whenever the National is in Detroit collaborating in some way. Because
we will. We will.
Yeah.
Not think about. We will.
Yes.
Right? I can't wait.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Can't wait.
Well, Todd, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
It's been just a lot of fun. Obviously, as a lifelong Tiger fan, I am biased in that respect, but the stories across whoever's a fan of baseball, honestly. I mean, and so I think people will love the stories that you tell.
Thank you.
So thank you for telling.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
And Todd, you'll have to send me your address.
I will.
I was on eBay. I bought you something already. So
you did?
Yeah. You'll see. I won't tell you what it is. It'll be a surprise when it gets there.
You're the best, guys. Thank you, Billy Yang. Thank you, Billy Yang, for making this all happen.
Yeah.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Have a good
Todd.
You too. Appreciate it.
Take care.